All right, so the tide is shifting against Francis in a big way. I'm going to talk about a few different ways how. I want to give credit where credit's due. This came from a comment on one of the videos that I did yesterday with the 10-7 MMA guys. But we're going to talk about this in a fashion that I have actually not even really thought through and made a point to talk about, because Francis's position right now versus where he was a year ago is actually hard to even wrap your brain around how far the slide appears to have been, right? Now, there is a possibility there are things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, but I just want to talk about the perception on in the public, and also the shifting now where, like, where is his support system? Like, where is Francis' support system, and why? Why does it look like this? Why does it appear that everybody is just like dropping Francis? You know what I mean? Where, like, I understand. I mean, I certainly will speak to my what's the right word? Like, my impression or my hypothesis about why some of this is happening. But it's crazy. It feels like he's being abandoned by everybody. And I find that very interesting, because what's really changed? And if you really think about what Francis is trying to do, I don't understand how anybody would not at least have to qualify whatever their opinion is about him with acknowledging that what he was doing is pretty commendable, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, it just is. And we talked about this. Anyway, I'll get into it. Because he was making demands not for himself. That's the crazy thing. Francis was not making demands for himself, okay? Like, his demands were not about money. His demands were about helping all the other fighters, okay? So in all honesty, people who are hating on Francis, they're like, oh, blah, 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 blah. It's actually kind of ridiculous if you really think about it. Now, do I want him to come back and fight John Jones? 1,000%. Am I a huge, huge Francis Ngannou fan? Obviously, I am, okay? So I don't understand really. Like, I'm very curious what you guys think. So I'll qualify it like this. I always ask for a subscription, in every video, because that's, the content is free. The cost is you just have to listen to me ask for you to subscribe if you're going to be watching my content, and also to please subscribe if you haven't yet. So please subscribe to the channel, like the video, help me get out of the algorithm rut that I put myself in this weekend because I'm a moron. And we'll, I really appreciate it though, because when I see the subscriber base go up, it makes me very happy. When I see it not go up, it makes me very unhappy. So it just is what it is, man. That's the one thing about doing this full time, is you're a slave to the numbers emotionally. It's really weird, dude. When it was like, when I had a full-time job and I wasn't trying to focus exclusively on building all this stuff, I didn't care. I just posted videos, whatever. That's the downside of this being your full time. I think you really focused on the analytics, and anyway, it's neither here nor there. I would really appreciate you guys helping me out, subscribing, commenting, and liking the video. So anyway, so here's the deal, right? Francis has very little support in the public, I see, right? And I want to make very clear, when I've been harping on Francis, been like, dude, does he not understand where he is? My entire point is to help him. Because I'm saying you can't do this without a team. Trying to do this without a manager is super, super, super naive. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you guys by making a point about where he was 1 year ago and where he is now, okay? Because what is it? It's almost April, right? So I remember in April of you know what? Yes, exactly. No, I'm sorry. It's April last year. So April of last year, I was in Cancun. I was in Cancun on a trip with Gabrielle and my family, okay? So I remember that was the fight where Tyson Fury fought at Wembley. And I knew that Francis and Markel and those guys were in England at that show. And so I was like looking for them, whatever, and I'm watching it, and I was live streaming from my hotel room. And by the way, I'm gonna be off site starting Saturday all through next week. So this is kind of a more, I'm gonna be streaming off of my computer as opposed to being in my studio. So just get ready for that, But anyway, so I saw it. I'm looking for Francis, whatever. They show him in the crowd, and then after the fight, Francis is brought into the ring with Tyson Fury, where these two enormous behemoths stand next to each other and they go, yeah, we're going to fight next. And he's going into free agency in 6 months, 7, 8 months. Okay. That is the position he was in. Here's me and the biggest boxing star there is that could basically make sure that I get paid $30 million for a fight that we put on together. I have my arm around him. He has his arm around me. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Now, I don't know this for sure, but I have heard that the relationship between the UFC and the Tyson Fury and camp is not good. I can't tell you any details around that other than people who are in the know have told me they're like, oh yeah, there's no love lost between those guys. I have no idea. I don't know if it's true. I have no idea. But that is the rumor that I have heard from people who would know. So when it comes to that, right, it's like, all right, so if there's no relationship there, you were like, Francis was in such a good position to slide right into this fight. They had already announced it. If the UFC was going to sue him for that, they would have, right? They would have. Now, I was saying from the very beginning, I do not believe that the UFC will sue Francis. They might threaten to do so, but I don't think they will, because in the event that Francis goes to court and wins, then that gives legal certainty to the sunset clause, and the UFC won't be able to kind of loom over guys having to do with their sunset clause actually being a definitive end to their contract. But nonetheless, he couldn't have been in a better position. Couldn't have been, right? Couldn't have been. And somehow now, a year later, he is an unrestricted free agent, and we have absolutely no idea what he's doing. How is it that a year ago, when he was under contract with the UFC, we knew exactly what he was doing, and he's got his arm around the guy who he's going to fight in Wembley Stadium, and now a year later, we have no idea what he's doing? How? How could that have happened? I'll tell you the answer: lack of a management team. That's the management team's job. You can't expect a guy to be a world-class fighter, be exceptional in the ring, one of the greatest guys of all time, Tyson Fury, certainly, and Francis, one of the greatest heavyweight MMA guys of all time, who's super young in the sport. You can't expect that, and then also expect them to be business savvy enough to manage their own career, unless there's someone like Sean O'Malley, who is going to do their whole career with the UFC, and they're playing the nice guy role. Now, bottom line, if Sean O'Malley had management where their only goal was just to squeeze the UFC, he could probably get a little bit more money, just because it's not because the UFC is not taking care of Sean. It's not because they don't have a great relationship. It's because that is the nature of negotiations and leverage. If you have someone who's going to play it hard, like they're going to play it hard, you'll get more money eventually with a guy like Sean. But Sean has chosen to manage the relationship himself because they take care of him. I'm going to say this right now, okay? I have obviously been very cognizant of what I say about Dana or Hunter or any of these guys online, but this is a fact. I have heard nothing but good things about Dana behind the scenes. Nothing. Literally nothing. And I heard more of that yesterday from Justin James, who's a UFC fighter he was in and then he was out. He's like, dude, when you're under contract with the UFC, this is the thing about fighter healthcare. He's like, dude, the fighters get taken care of. He's like, you don't have any healthcare needs that are not taken care of. You go to the PI, they will provide you doctors and healthcare if you're under contract. The problem is after the career. And I would imagine that a lot of you guys would say, well, after the career is a little bit dicey. I agree. How is the UFC supposed to be responsible for damage taken to a guy who was fighting for 10 years before they even got in the UFC, and then they have however many fights in the UFC, and you don't even have any idea what they're doing in the ring or in training? Like, they don't have any control of how safe a guy is or not safe in training, and then they're responsible for his health afterwards. It doesn't make any sense, dude. And when it comes to Dana specifically, I have heard nothing but good things about him taking care of his guys and that he's just dealing with a bunch of psychos, okay? Like, that is honestly what I've heard. Not exclusively. Obviously, there are certain people who have had problems with him, but like, I've heard mostly that. So that is the direction that Sean O'Malley has chosen to take. And to be perfectly honest with you, knowing my own personality, that's exactly what I would probably have done too. If I was in Sean's position, if I was in one of these, like, I don't like conflict, dude. I'm good at it. I'm real fucking good at it. Like, if someone ever really pushes the envelope and gets it to where I'm like, all right, dude, I don't like it, but you've forced my hand now. I mean, I'm really good at it. You guys seen my fake interviews? If you get me motivated, I'll just do 100 fake interviews of whoever it is, 100 of them. I'll have them admitting to, jerking off their mom, your mom. Yeah. So your mom has it's a terrible example. That would not have been good. I mean, you guys saw how I did Fabia, and I didn't even do any fake interviews. I have endless ability to nuke people and make it funny online, but I don't like it. I'd rather make fun of people that I know would laugh when they see it. And so, personality-wise, if I was Sean, that's exactly what I would probably do too. I don't want to get into some nasty thing with the UFC and have to squeeze him. So I understand people doing that. I'm not just because he'd make more money saying that's the wrong thing. But Francis was going hard for other people. That's the thing. Like, if Sean's only doing Sean, which is fine. It's just fine. You're not responsible for these other guys. But Francis took it upon himself to be responsible for other guys. What he was asking for was fighter health care and a representative for all fighters that can negotiate big things for the UFC, kind of like a union. And the UFC wouldn't give it to him. I'm not saying I would have given it to him if it was the UFC. But now that John Jones is the champion, just like throwing Francis to the wolves, like who's supporting Francis right now publicly? Like who is actually supporting Francis and saying, wow, Francis did a good thing? Nobody. And honestly, I'm not even necessarily doing that. He turned down a lot of money. And the only reason, and obviously I'm commending him on his, on like where his heart was and where his head was. But at the same time, if you're really genuinely not in a position to get the thing you're asking for, sometimes you got to do you, man. You know what I mean? Like, you got to do you at a certain point. And you got to understand what position you're in, because Francis genuinely is not in a position to demand those things and then get them. You know who is? Conor. And actually, Conor's not even anymore, really. Well, I take that back. Conor actually is. Because if he was going to be a free agent and could do whatever he wanted, that's a problem. That's a problem the UFC could not take on. But does Conor seem like a guy who's going to selflessly ask for things for the entire UFC, fighter base and not sign some enormous lucrative deal as a result of them not giving it? I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's in line with his personality. And that's not even a knock on Conor. I mean, I'm not even pretending that that's what I would do. You know what I mean? So I don't know, dude. It's like, it just seems to me like Francis is like not getting the, people should have his back more is all I'm saying. Like, people just shitting on him, be like, who cares about Francis? Who cares about Francis? But I will say, a year ago, he's in the ring with Tyson Fury. Where did that go? And so now with no management, what you're relying on is a potential deal that you're going to do with Tyson Fury and his family, who we just found out can't read. Like, I'm not saying that as a knock on the Furies. I actually think that's super gangster that they can't read, to be honest. But just in terms of business, like, you're trying to do business and you're like, so who are you reliant on? They're all those guys. You're all the guys that literally just said that they can't read. Yep. You're all, I mean, I feel as though you should probably have some management that's going to deal with their management or whatnot, because you know what I mean? Anyway, Francis, get a manager for God's sake. I'm rooting for you. See? Here, this is Francis about to sign a contract that's giving him tons and tons of money. And he got it because he got a good management team and they put together a blockbuster fight. And then this is him almost winning, putting on a good enough boxing performance that it was like, wow, no one thought he'd have been able to put up a fight like that. Maybe he even wins. And then here's him coming back to UFC, signing that contract. Thanks, Dana. Thanks for all of it. And then he's fighting John Jones. John Jones is trying to take him down. He shakes him off, and then he knees him straight in the jaw. Good night, John Jones. Say hello to the real GOAT. The end. Subscribe to the channel. Love you guys.